Excellencies, distinguished delegates, may we kindly ask you to take your seats as the meeting will commence momentarily. Thank you.
Yeah. I hereby call the meeting to order. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good morning and welcome back. I hope you had a pleasant evening yesterday. We will begin this morning with our considerations of Agenda Item 4, assessing the demographic trends and intergenerational relations in Asia and the Pacific. The background documents for this agenda item is ESCAP/CST8/4, Demographic Trends and Intergenerational Relations in Asia and the Pacific. Under this agenda item, the committee is invited to highlight actions taken to address social and economic challenges and opportunities associated with slower population growth and the demographic shift characterizing Asia and the Pacific. This agenda item will begin with a panel discussion to be followed by interventions from the floor. I have the pleasure to invite Ms. Sabine Henning, Chief Sustainable Demographic Transition Sections of the Social Development Divisions, ESCAP, to moderate the discussion on assessing demographic trends and intergenerational relation in Asia and the Pacific.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kindly ask the panelists to join me in the sofa chairs. Good morning, distinguished panelists, delegates, participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to moderate this roundtable on assessing demographic trends and intergenerational relations in Asia and the Pacific. We have 4 distinguished panelists. Mrs. Supanada Lauhachai, Director, Office of the National Economic and Social Development Council. Mr. Rohit Prasad, Chief Executive Officer, HelpAge India. Mrs. Wei-Chan Lau, Professor, Department of Social Work and Social Administration and Director, Sao Po Center on Aging, University of Hong Kong, China. And Mr. Paul Ong, Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief Strategy Officer, Sao Foundation, Singapore. Before we begin our discussion, we would like to show a brief video that provides an overview of the topic. We will hear the voices of younger and older generations sharing their reflections on intergenerational relations. May we please show the video?
I'm a PhD student from India. My name is Tengku Aizan Hamid. I'm from Malaysia. Hello, my name is Sosha Bates and I'm from London.
My name is Sawang Kiakanthar from Thailand.
I think in my view, the most noticeable change between generations has been the communication gap. Over time, this dynamic has shifted, with younger generations now playing a bigger role when it comes to decision making, especially in regards to technology. The generations still have conservative views on issues like marriage, career choices, whether to have children or not, involvement in housework, and perhaps most importantly, mental health, which the younger generations often challenge.
Different generations has different expectations and needs, and each cohort moves through distinct socio-economic and cultural milieu that creates value changes, and priorities and norms are different. So we all need the same thing in life, but times have changed, and it's hard for us to really have a shared perspective on things. So after all, we are interdependent on each other.
The main social issues and the rapidly evolving social landscape present the most significant hindrance. For example, younger generations often advocate for progressive change on issues like climate change, inequality, and gender rights through activism and social media, whereas older persons tend to value stability and tradition. And I think that the intergenerational communication gap exacerbates misunderstandings further and can perpetuate stereotypes, ultimately making it harder to build meaningful connections between generations.
Because of the social change and globalization or IT system or whatsoever, they change the mind of the younger generation. Financial security in old age, the lack of the family support in the future. The young people, the working age people, they don't prepare from now. How can they live independently when they get old?
First step is empathy and open communication. Both generations need to recognize that each other's concerns are equally valid. Younger people can address the digital divide by teaching older persons how to use digital tools like smartphones or social media, which will help them stay connected and reduce the fear of technology.
That may be encouraged to be conducted is the mentorship program, because I know in universities and in schools they need to have interaction with older people and young people, and especially if they have if the older persons are living in institutions, the children coming to play with them, to interact with them, will improve their images and will make them happy. And when they are happy, things becomes better for them.
Younger generations should focus on creating spaces for open dialogue, actively listening to and respecting the perspectives of older generations, and understanding that their views are shaped by unique life experiences. I think that it's not about changing their opinions, but finding common ground. And for me, it's essential that both generations recognize that the other generation has something invaluable to offer.
Strengthening social bond in community level is the key. Community-based home care, which is the care in place. Because in Thailand, we have a village health volunteer who is very strong in the young generation to pay attention or to visit the older people who need help in their own community. I think this is the way out.
Ladies and gentlemen, this video highlighted some of the challenges and opportunities we face as our region's population age structure changes. Never before have people of so many age cohorts been living together. This presents unique challenges, but it also offers opportunities for strengthening intergenerational relations and solidarity. This discussion is also highly relevant at the global level, including, for example, with reference to the Summit of the Future and its Pact for the Future. Promotion of stronger social cohesion across generations and strengthening of intergenerational solidarity are key elements of the Pact. We have about 60 minutes for the discussion, which will focus on different dimensions on intergenerational relations. I will pose 2 rounds of questions to the panelists, and there will then be Q&A from the floor. I kindly request that the panelists be very concise. For the first round, please limit your responses to 5 minutes. Let me start with you, Mrs. Supanada Lauhachai. The National Economic and Social Development Council provides input to national policies in various areas, including on poverty, social protection, and inequality. The Council's work is inherently forward-looking, as it develops 5-year national plans concerning economic and social development. In this regard, please tell us how demographic trends towards smaller family sizes and populations affect economies in Asia and the Pacific. In particular, please share your reflections on the use of NTAs, National Transfer Accounts, for policymaking. Over to you.
Thank you, Sabine. Well, as we all here know, that the demographic transition in Asia and Pacific is really rapid, and we sort of all, seeing from the video, and I'm sure everyone here also experienced, the impact of it. And in terms of the overview impact, of course, the demographic shifts imply, shrinking working age population, which impact, productivity, and it also led to, significant increase in healthcare expenditure, and also pose some, it also has a bigger, you can all see the bigger pension spending and all that, so that sort of also raised concerns on fiscal sustainability in the future. So for policymakers, we all sort of see and know that there are these impacts going on in the economy, but we don't really know the magnitude of the impact, and that's where the NTA, or the National Transfer Account, comes in. The NTA, or the National Transfer Account, is basically it's the GDP, but it shows how much of that GDP is generated by different ages, and it also shows how much of that GDP is consumed by different ages as well. Not only that, the NTA also shows how much each of the age groups are supported by government, public spendings and all the public supports. And finally, which is very important, is that the NTA also shows how different generations and different age groups support one another, especially in the family. And so, so with that, the NESDC, which is a planning agency where I'm from, see the importance of the NTA, and we compile that data and use it for policy making. One of the example that how we use the NTA for policy making is that we during the consideration of the implementation of the child support grants in Thailand, which is grants given to low-income families with children aged 0 to 6 years old, we use the NTA data to show that the government supports to preschool children is really low compared to school-age children. And we sort of bring that into the attention of the cabinet, you know, and to policy decision makers. And using that as a support for this policy, the child support grants, is sort of give policymakers confidence on that. That's actually where the policy gap is, and that's as a result of that, the child support grant in Thailand was launched, and it has continued with expansion of the child support grants to, you know, like the threshold has been raised so that more and more families are included in the programs, and it's been quite successful. Yes, so that's pretty much my response.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lauhachai, for sharing these reflections with a focus on Thailand, and I think other countries really can learn quite a bit from your experience. Now let us move on to Mr. Rohit Prasad, as a CSO representative, also with much experience from the private sector, working on healthcare and public health and technology, now with a focus on older persons. Please tell us how the generational gap between younger and older generations can be bridged to improve health and well-being of both. And how can lifelong learning initiatives be designed to include younger and older generations? Over to you.
Thank you, Sabine. You mentioned about lifelong learning and health, and I'll come to that. But let me first make just a few points about the intergenerational approach itself. Now, intergenerational approach can be transformational. We all know that. But in my view, it's not being leveraged enough. And it's an opportunity to be unlocked. And I am not referring to just the family construct as a unit. We know that's changing. 50% of families in India are now nuclear. We had very deep roots in joint family system. So the opportunity is to bring communities of youth and communities of elders together. Now, numbers make the case. Sabine mentioned about cohorts living together. Take India as an example, 1.4 billion population, 50% below 30, 10% more than 60, 150 million, but this number will rise to 300 million by 2050, doubling. So you have the opportunity of generations together. And the economic case, I would argue, is even more compelling. If you look at most low and middle income countries, they will grow old while trying to become rich. So they will be resource constrained. And you have this huge asset and therefore a very cost-effective model. So my first submission will be that make intentional intergenerational as a focus, bring it into policy, programs, and initiatives. Now let's see this in the context of the lifelong learning. And in my view, it is one of the most underserved, almost ignored areas across countries. A study we did in India said that 30 to 40% elders want to keep learning. They want to volunteer. They want to continue to work. At policy level, we have now active aging and productive aging is a goal, and we do want to realize both the youth dividend as well as the longevity dividend. But here is the complication. Most formal learning and educational systems are designed as youth-centric. Informal systems, the culture, the traditional ones like family are weakening. So what options and solutions are there? Let me give you some examples. Can educational systems be reoriented for learning across generation? China has a full-fledged university for elders. Thailand started some schools. In India, we had one university starting a unit for seniors. So think about this. What if we were to reimagine at scale our universities as multi-generational communities? Can we launch specific programs? At HelpAge India, we have one of the longest running school-based programs called SAVE, or Students Action for Value Education or Valuing Elders. So recently we launched digital literacy workshops where students train seniors, and it's magical. Not only the knowledge transfer, but there's a lot of bonding and sharing that happens. What about intergenerational in the community context? Now in the network, the HelpAge network has pioneered something called intergenerational self-help groups or self-help clubs or older people association. Now think about it, 20, 30% are youth are members, rest are older people, and they share. They share about climate change knowledge, traditional to new. They talk about advocating for change together, and it's very powerful. Now, coming to health, now that's one of the areas where life course approach is very dominant, and many of you know that. Now, it is about stages, but if you think about it, it's very complementary. If youth are sensitized about aging upfront, they become much more appreciative about aging. And as they grow, they not only think about their aging, but also about opportunities to address the solutions. So health is a big area, but let me focus on two specific examples here. And I would say that the intergenerational approach can be very powerful in physical health, but particularly so in psychological and mental health. Dementia is rising fast, we know that, and early diagnosis is an important action. But younger caregivers and families are unaware or misinformed. So community-based dementia care or intergenerational can be very powerful. And we have started a program focusing on educating communities and intend to take it to schools and colleges. There is the interesting example of Friendline, and many of you may have heard about it, but it's there in some countries where youth volunteer to spend some time on phone or WhatsApp now with elders. It's not a crisis or a helpline, but just to chat, a conversation, and can be hugely beneficial to reduce loneliness. Earlier, there used to be pen pals. Now we have the phone pals or the virtual pals, if you may. So the idea that generations together can come together, we just launched a program on generations together. And the lifelong learning and health and well-being is very connected. And then both of them, if you think of it, is deep-rooted in social connections or relationships. So if you think about intergenerational as an approach, it can be magical, it can be transformational, and it's an opportunity waiting to be tapped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad, for providing your overall assessment of the importance of the intergenerational approach, and then focusing on two aspects, the lifelong learning and the health, and making it magical, indeed. Now, my next question goes to Mrs. Wai-Chung Lau. As a representative of academia based in East and Northeast Asia, please share with us how changing household sizes and compositions are reshaping intergenerational living arrangements across Asia and the Pacific. And what innovative caregiving options are there? Can you reflect on any examples from the region? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sari. So this is my honor to join this panel discussion on this topic. I think there's a very important for us to understand the underpinning or grand forces. First of all, is urbanization, then is increased education for all the ages, and then the shifting of economic roles. That means women become more and more popular to join the labor force, and then last but not the least are the technology development. So when we have these four underpinning forces, then we back to look at the change of the family size. We do have expected longer and longer life expectancy, but at the same time, we have the decrease of the fertility. So in that context, population aging becomes an global issue, and everyone is talking about that, not only on care, but also on the GDP development, economic sustainability, all these stuff. But when we return to the issue on the intergenerational support, I think one of the things that population aging would alarm us and also put us into opportunity is that how multi-generation can health together. You know, we cannot say, okay, only old people deserve a healthy aging. We know that aging actually starts not from 60, it starts from 20, 30, and then in the middle age, the lifestyle evidence research has already confirmed that if we can have a healthy lifestyle in the early childhood and also in the middle adulthood, and then we will have healthy aging. So I think these great opportunity is for multi-generational in the community to focus more on the healthy aging. So what are the evidences? For example, exercises, for example, nutrition, for example, equality of health care, you know, and also maybe equality of housing. So all these would put us together to think about the solution. And the second thing is about female workforce participation. And then in relating to intergenerational care, now females are not only demanded to take care of children while they are in their 20s, 30s, but also to take care of their parents and grandparents along their whole life. Of course, there are emerging observation on the male who also take up caregiving roles. So here in the labor workforce setting, so what actually challenges us is how we can make our workforce, first of all, multi-generational friendly, and secondly is caregiving friendly. So how we can actually encourage not only the government settings, the non-government social settings, but also the market sectors to consider that the caregiver-friendly policy or measures must be in place. Otherwise, people would quit jobs. So the cost for any markets actually is very high, because if you quit jobs, you have to hire, you have to retain, and then you have to nurture that leadership and all these things. So how we can make sure this could happen, I think this is the coming challenge and also very important. The third thing is about migration and mobility, and the whole world becomes very mobile, not only internationally, but also within a country, so people mobile. Oh, that would create a lot of challenge for intergenerational care and also intergenerational exchange. So how we can leverage on the development of technology and make us mobile but connected, make us living apart but connected. This is somehow, I think the great opportunity will be created for technology so that we can really live in a world that with all the connections, but not geographically must that we have to live in the same household, we have to live under the same roof. This could be a tradition, but in future we have to really go beyond that. So last but not the least is about the nuclearization of family. We must respect this trend to look at how this nuclearization of family would have an impact on our future policy issues. That means our policy has to focus more on the neighborhood-based support system to support the nuclear family for them so that they can keep connect with multi-generations. For there, they can keep on taking care of each other to make our world a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lau, for sharing your reflections on the living arrangements, housing arrangements, but also on the change in the family and caregiving and what it means to address these challenges, but also opportunities today. Now let me turn to Mr. Paul Ong. As a representative of civil society, but someone who also worked at the United Nations on innovative solutions to healthy aging, I would like to ask you about the key factors that make intergenerational practices successful with a focus on community settings. And can you share some intergenerational practice you have observed in Asia and the Pacific? Over to you.
Thank you, Sabine, and thank you actually for having us here today. I think this is a very, very interesting and important, I think, event and topic that we're discussing. To follow on, I think, from Professor Liu's point, I think that one of the things that I want to emphasize is that an intergenerational approach to anything is fundamentally predicated actually on a life course approach. At last APPC, one of the things I was very struck by was, for example, a discussion, don't quite remember the context of it, but coming from Cambodia, about how Cambodia had become a middle-income country around about 2015 and had aspirations to become a high-income country by about 2050. I was reflecting on the experience of Singapore, how it started out as a low-income country in 1963, 64, and then gained its independence in 65. And my parents basically were born in that country. And of course, today Singapore is this high-income metropolis. The thing I think that we need to understand here is that when we talk about intergenerational approach, we're not talking about different people. We're actually talking about the way we construct a society so that a single person can start out from being young, like a 5-year-old in Cambodia in 2015, becomes sort of middle age in an increasingly more wealthy country, say, 30 in 2045 when it's a middle income country, and then maybe when they actually become an older person in 2095, Cambodia itself is transformed into something that's a lot like Singapore. So these are not separate people, it's a single person undertaking this entire journey. So the concept of intergenerational equity is so important in this. And the UN DESA's own definition of it, where life course policy making is taken seriously and is done in such a way that policies made for one generation do not accidentally or deliberately disadvantage a different generation. And it's very important that we construct a society and think about the way that we will develop, I think, all of the generations and bring them together with that sort of view in mind, that isn't us or them, but a single person that will, or a single group actually, that will traverse this entire journey. So the video, I think, that we saw this morning was extremely powerful because it also validates a 9-country focus group discussion methodology, that SAO had run in 3 South Asian countries and then in 6 Southeast Asian countries, where we brought together communities of young people, communities of middle-aged people, communities of older people, to sit together and to talk about their experiences of being the age that they are, and then looking forward actually into what the next experience would be. And we presented quite a lot of this work actually in Bali a couple of weeks ago at the HelpAge conference. And what came out actually, very interestingly enough, is that for intergenerational activities really to have an impact and to work, it is actually critical that an old person, a young person, do not see the age of the person, but they actually reconnect as human beings. I'm a human being reconnecting to you as a human being. And I try to understand the world that you come from. Because otherwise what will happen is that you have the sort of broken dialogues that we saw in these groups, the kind of differences between the generations that we saw in the video, the lack of understanding, the old saying, oh, the young, they're just flaky, snowflakes, the strawberry generation, they're not robust, they have no ability basically to be the way we are. But the young people also looking at these older people and saying, we really respect you for having built up the country, fought the War of Independence, or developed our nation, but you belong to the past, please stay there. So the tone essentially of the dialogue that you create is not just about having the voice of a young generation, the voice of an old generation, but the tone that the generation actually has is very important. Are they seen essentially as having a voice that's relevant to the present, as well as a voice that's relevant to the future, as well as representing a voice from the past as well? That tone is extremely important, because otherwise older people simply get stuck with the voice from the past, young people simply get stuck with the voice from the future and not considered relevant to the present. And so at this Bali conference, one young lass actually sat on the stage and said, out of our focus group discussion, we have a message for all of you. As part of the younger generation, please don't keep talking about handing the torch over to my generation. We're not interested in taking your torch. We want to find a new way. So we need to listen to things like that. So intergenerational dialogues is fundamentally how you get two people simply to reconnect again and to understand the world that they're living in. So to return finally to the issue essentially of what makes these interventions, if you like, or programs successful, I think it's important when you start out with these things, it's natural for us to create boundaries around them. So you create an older people's association, for example, to take a classic community-based organization structure that we know, that's widely utilized for aging activities in Asia and Southeast Asia. Now, these things are important because they give voice, perhaps, to a group that has been disenfranchised and perhaps devoiced for a very long time. You give them resources, a sense that they belong in the community, and a sense, essentially, that that voice needs to be heard. Similarly for the youth. But I think what we're also learning from these community-based organization work is that at a certain point, these organizations need to break out of their generational boundaries. And so an older person's organization, older people's organization needs to become just simply people's organization, an all people's organization. So I think the natural evolution from having activities structured for each generation and then breaking down those walls and connecting them all so that they become one people again is a really, really critical aspect to how we actually do this type of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ong, for reflecting on the importance of the life course approach, but also talking about dialogue and the tone of dialogue between the generations. And I hope our discussion today will contribute somewhat to that dialogue as well. Now let us turn to the second round of questions. Again, I would like to remind panelists to be very short and concise. We only have 4 minutes now for the responses. I would like to come back to you, Mrs. Supanada Lawachai. Based on your experience working in Thailand, what are your experiences with regard to South-South cooperation to address some of these challenges and opportunities in implementing policies, for example, based on NTAs, the economic aspects of intergenerational relations? Are there any lessons learned from Thailand? Over to you.
Thank you. So basically based on South-South cooperation that we've had, I think one of the main challenges for using NTA for policy implementation is actually the communication to policymakers. You know, the NTA concept is really, it's quite technical and it's a bit complicated concept. So even at my agency, which is also a planning agency, we have, you know, a data compilation section, and we also have a policy formulation section, and we also find difficulties in communicating between the data compilers and the data users, especially those who would use that data to formulate policies. And I think from the South-South cooperation that we had, it seems to be also the same issue going on in other countries as well. And also, you know, another also important challenge is that, you know, in order to use the NTA data for policy making, you know, you usually don't have, usually can't really just use the NTA data, but you sort of have to do some more work on it, you know, using the NTA into the, you know, simulation models, you know, showing policymakers what are the impacts of the policy intervention that would be the actual impacts of it, you know, on the budget, on the economy, and all that, you know, and using NTA in that sense sort of requires a lot of expertise and time, which sometimes in my agency is a bit limited, and so in that sense, if you know, there's one study by the UNFPA Asia Pacific Regional Office that explore the uses of NTA in Asia Pacific region, and what they found is that the use of NTA in Asia and the Pacific hasn't really got up to that level. Most of them remain into, you know, like compiling the NTA and then showing the data and use that for policy advocacy of what are the impacts of demographic transition on different ages in the society, as well as, you know, the impact of it on the economy as a whole. But the use for policy implementation really, so that sort of limit the implementation of the policy by using the NTA, you know. But it's not that we don't have the opportunities at all, you know. So there's also opportunities that we found, and for the case of Thailand. And I think also from, NTA networks around the world, I think the big support from, UNFPA, for example, so really helps on NTA advocacy. And with that, we do a lot of, communicating the NTA concepts in the form of, easy forms like infographics or video clips or holding like seminars and workshops and all that. And that sort of help the NTA to become sort of more recognized by, policymakers and all the potential users. And the lessons from really specifically from Thailand, I think, is that, the NTA data is institutionalized into planning agency in Thailand. But with that, it doesn't guarantee that the use of NTA would be, utilized in the most efficient way. It's actually the network of relevant sectors, like academia, international organizations like the UNFPA, and also, related agencies, as well as, like global NTA networks. These are really actually the key factors that would sort of, I think, would make the implementation of policies based on NTA really in the most effective ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing those reflections on national transfer accounts and the importance of South-South cooperation. I can say for ESCAP that the United Nations entities stand together in working with governments and stakeholders and experts to bringing more the policy, the advocacy out of the NTAs and making those messages clearer to all of us, including, of course, policymakers, for taking some of the lessons learned forward. Thank you very much for sharing those insights from Thailand. I now turn to Mr. Prasad. How can younger and older generations be more effectively engaged through technology? What role can governments and civil society play in facilitating this engagement? Over to you.
Well, technology or digital is the hot topic, and we know that the Summit of Future also had Global Digital Compact as one of in the declaration. Now, it is a big mega trend, and it's propelling and impacting our society. And with the artificial intelligence, it has brought in a new dimension as well. But the way we seek information, the way we live, the way we get entertained, the way we access services, everything is dramatically changing. And governments too are investing big time in digital public infrastructure. In fact, in India, the Digital India mission is one of the biggest and one of the most successful missions. But younger generations, of course, have taken it as fish to water. But the reality is that older generations are struggling. And we see this as a CSO working on the ground. We see this in our work. It's called the digital divide, and let me just characterize it a little bit for you. One is at the level of access to devices and smartphones and data or services. The second is the digital literacy, or the ability to use and the ability to use confidently. At the recent ESCAP organized digital conference, a lot of data came about, and one of them was that on an average, 50% know how to use, and just 20% say they are confident. Therefore, most use is limited to very basic services, and you would experience in your family that it's like information, entertainment, and the more complex and the valuable, like the financial access, health, e-governance, e-commerce, are not being accessed. And the related aspect is, of course, that older people are becoming primary targets or victims of digital scams. But now let's switch it around and look at the opportunity. What if we bridge the divide and created an enabling ecosystem? Let me outline 3 areas that I think are important. Starts with the mindset, address the digital ageism or digital exclusion. It prevails, let's acknowledge it, it prevails amongst policymakers, industry, and also in family. We need to think about tech for all generations. Second, prioritize. And we are not prioritizing, but we prioritize and scale up digital literacy for elders with urgency and at scale. The time is short. Specially designed programs. And I would argue for all of you to think that older persons will catch up on their own is a bad idea. Or saying that leave it to families is also a bad idea. So you need proactive policies and programs for seniors, and intergenerational can, of course, be a big enabler. Now, the government and the private sector as the creators of the ecosystem, have a bigger role to play. And I'll give you some examples. Google recently started a digital safety program. We got a grant from them, and we are working to educate 70,000 seniors for digital safety. Now, it's a drop in the ocean, but the tech giants like the Google, Microsoft, Amazon have an obligation and role to think about access for all generations. The private sector has a role too, and age tech is now beginning to come up. But think about it. What if the private sector was designing it for these senior citizens, both in user interface and user experience? It's more customized for banks, taxi apps, food delivery firms, and so on. Government, e-government services are big, and we know it's excellent, and the government to citizen services are becoming big. In pension, India has direct benefit to bank accounts. Telemedicine is on the rise. But if you look at the age disaggregated data, you will find that the adoption amongst for those who are intended is very low. And that is where you need to bring in specific bridges or actions to ensure that senior citizens get that access. And youth can play a big role. They are the bridge to that. And in our work, we have found that you just add the youth component to it, the volunteers, and suddenly the magic happens of connections. The CSOs, as a role, we are connected to the community. We are close to the community. We understand their voices and choices. But if the government, the private sector, and the CSO connect together, obviously there's a lot more that we can do. And I think I commend ESCAP for including the CSOs in this conversation. And I think we need to do a lot more. And there's tremendous opportunity in bringing the technology and the generations together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad. Engagement is key, and your examples show how we can together build this enabling ecosystem, which you referred to. Now my question goes to Mrs. Wai-Chan Lu. What do you foresee as future intergenerational living arrangements across the regions? How can government, civil society, the public sector, families work together towards these shared goals? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, you know, in my mind, or I would dream that one day we can actually bring generation together and to achieve a balance between autonomy, interdependency, and connectedness. That means we have to emphasize all three. So first of all, about autonomy, we all understand aging older adults, they want to aging in place. They want to live in their familiar place as long as possible. So many of them choose to live alone. So they don't wish to move into institutions. How we can leverage on the neighborhood community and maybe technology to work out smart homes and also to work out some mutual support groups, time bank programs, all these things to support people to assert their autonomy, but at the same time keep them being connected with the world, with the neighborhood, and also with the world. And then at the family layers, I think we have to think more creatively on living apart but connected. In our culture, we have a concept about a distance of a soup. That means if you deliver a soup to your parents, to your children, the soup keeps warm. And then it is still very tasty. So how we can create or to promote an ecology or living arrangement that we can keep each nuclear family a bit of the autonomy, but at the same time, they can take care of each other when in need, and also they can gathering together when they have opportunities. So this can be and only be achieved by a higher level of policies. For example, how we can make our neighborhood more multi-generational friendly. So this is very important because, as I shared before, sometimes we have space only for children, for example, the playground. But then we have space only for older adults, the daycare centers, but can we put them together? Can we have a co-space for children to play and for older adults to rest or leisure? They can actually share some of the spaces, but at the same time, they can have their own independent space. So I think in neighborhood, the space design, the environmental design is as important as we motivating multi-generational people to mutually support with each other. I actually studied a lot on how we can bring intergenerational support network go beyond the family. Because in the Asia and the Pacific region, we understand that we emphasize family a lot. We put a lot of, we call it private discourse within the family settings. We think, oh, discuss this, oh, the life and death issues, the financial issues, the living arrangement issue, the care arrangement issues. They're very private. We don't actually open this to the public. We don't want to seek support from the others. So this should be breakdown so that we can, as the video expressed by generation, so that we can communicate, we can connect it. These are all very important issues. Last but not least, I think all these need government high level of strategic directions. For example, you know, how we can make some financial incentives for multi-generations to mutually support with each other, how we can give guidance for the urban planning or the neighborhood design or the building department to work out solutions so that whenever possible, and the co-living, co-learning, co-sharing spaces idea can be achieved and optimized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lau, and your suggestions are very practical and actionable. Thank you for that. Mr. Ong, we have learned quite a bit today already, but I also want to build on what you have learned in your experience in working with different generations in Singapore and other parts of the world. What have we learned in terms of advancing social progress in Asia and the Pacific? Over to you.
So I think whether it's digital soup or real soup, if we're to actually get it from one generation to another generation, I think that the first thing we need to bear in mind watching the video today is that the two young lasses that we saw today, one day will become Tunku Aizan, right? So that's the life journey that we all undertake. I think based on our focus group discussions, I think the issues that were brought up basically by the young people, the older people in the video, but also the comments I think that Mr. Sawan made at the end of the video about how bring together communities to provide different activities like care and so on, is very much reflected, I think, in the detailed results from these 9 focus groups that we ran. And effectively what we discovered is that there is a chain of connectivity that happens, that can bring younger people and older people together and middle-aged people together as human beings again. And it starts with, as we've been discussing today actually, with a form of genuine human communication. One human being seeing another human being, touching that human being, relating to that human being. Is not just my grandfather. That's a person with a story, a person with a life. Maybe that grandfather, when he was young, had the same aspirations as I did to be a professional footballer. We both played football, that kind of thing. Can you reach that level of human connection? That level of human connection actually is the next stage after the communication. You have that sort of communication that leads to a genuine, deepened level of connectivity. I think, as Mrs. Liu said, that connection has to be there. It's out of that human-to-human touch that you have, that creates a kind of renewed commitment, if you like, between people to be a community again. And so that's the last aspect, essentially, of what we found in our focus group discussions as well. Communication, new kind of connectivity leading to renewed commitment, and then finally to the creation of a new type of community. And this is a community where multi-generations in roughly equal proportions will be sharing the same space. And going back to the thing about the voices, that we were hearing from the focus groups as well, it's very important that all of these groups have a voice, an equal voice that belongs to the past, an equal voice that belongs in the present, and an equal place in the future as well. they must be allowed actually to work together to co-create that future, not simply, as I alluded to earlier on, the simple handing on of a torch from one generation to another generation. Here, fix the climate change mess that we created. No. How do all these generations work together actually to transform the world together? Irrespective of whether it was you who made the mistake that you're passing on to another generation or otherwise, how do all peoples get together, basically, to work together to resolve these tensions and issues that have arisen? Otherwise, the hatreds, basically, that we see around the world together, sparking all these wars, will never end. The trauma from one generation to another generation, if you're simply handing on the torch, it will never end. You know, so it is really, really critical, actually, that we get to that place, actually, where the communication, connectivity, and that sort of renewed commitment to a new type of community actually does arise. So intergenerational is not simply some sort of activity, not some sort of policy initiative. It is actually integral to the way that we build a society of longevity. And a society, hopefully, that's more human, that's a bit kinder, that understands anyway that, you know, the purpose of society is not simply economics and power and making of money, but actually longevity has gifted us with the opportunity actually to have a longer, better life. We don't die young anymore. We have a chance to see children and our grandchildren. It's something to celebrate. We can't do this if we don't create this type of new intergenerational connectivity with a new kind of commitment. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these inspiring words about connectivity and creating community and looking ahead. So this concludes the round of questions we had prepared for, and I would now like to open up for some comments and reflections from the floor. We have time for this for a few minutes. I would please ask delegates not to read out their country statements yet. These are just questions, reflections towards the panelists. We will collect a few and then bring them back to our speakers. So with that, I'm open up the floor, and I see the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. Over to you.
Good morning, dear colleagues. I will speak Russian. Please use headphones for the interpretation service. Thank you so much. Thank you. Уважаемые коллеги, прежде всего хотел бы поблагодарить выступающих за эту интересную и очень важную дискуссию. Хотел бы отметить, что основной ролью семьи является рождение и воспитание детей, передача социального и культурного опыта новому поколению, сохранение традиционных духовно-нравственных ценностей. И в этой связи хотел бы тоже попросить комитет, чтобы он уделял особое внимание институту семьи. В России 2024 год по решению президента объявлен годом семьи. И основа России – это многопоколенная, многодетная семья. Забота государства, поддержка и внимание должны охватывать граждан всех возрастов, но особенно старшего поколения. Год семьи обращает наше внимание на самые важные ценности в жизни человека, защитить которые первостепенная задача. Семьи или одинокие пожилые люди, дети или взрослые, в любом возрасте может потребоваться помощь государства. И наша основная задача вместе с вами – это сделать жизнь людей лучше. Благодарю за внимание, это небольшой комментарий. Еще раз спасибо большое за эту дискуссию. Это было очень интересно и важно. Спасибо.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegates of the Russian Federation. I now call on the distinguished delegate of the Philippines. Over to you.
Thank you very much. The discussion about intergenerational approach in the community and neighborhood setting is very interesting to me. And of interest really is at the neighborhood and community setting, we have, of course, the older persons, the young persons, and we have the working age population. I am reminded of an innovation from India. They called it the Grandmother Project, where grandmothers of the neighborhood take care of the young children for the women who work. So I'm very interested if our distinguished speakers have very specific examples that they know of on this approach to supporting working age population using the intergenerational approach in the community and neighborhood setting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate of the Philippines. Maybe one more question from anyone in the room? If not, I will give it back to the panel. Is there anyone who would like to respond? We heard about the importance of the family and also about the concrete examples. Mr. Prasad?
Well, I'll go for that. I think the idea and the notion that family will be the central pillar or the core pillar around which the entire system needs to be developed is not only Asia-centric, but it's also something that, of course, in Asia is emphasized a lot. And I would totally agree with the gentleman from Russia that the family has to be the mainstay and we must nurture it fully. Having said that, we do recognize that not just relying it on the family or leaving it to the family and the governments and the system to say that the family should take care of is not the right approach. The systems around family has to be developed, strengthened, because in care, health, or lifelong learning, there are limitations that the family may have. And we see that, the migration, people are moving abroad, so parents want children to be successful and children are going to travel to another region and the parents are going to be left alone. So the neighborhood concept or the community concept will have to be strengthened. We have not done that enough. And I would argue that that investment needs to happen as we develop the family and nurture the family. And the grandparents and the role of seniors in care is well documented, although not valued in terms of monetary terms. And we know that the care economy is a big economy. But at the same time, one would say that the senior citizens of today and future will have a lot of aspirations. They want to live their life fully. At 60, you have another 20 years to live. Life expectancy in India is 78 at the age of 60. And you are healthy, you are fully alive, you want to achieve certain things. So from 60 to 80 or 60 to 70, the aspiration of the elders or the seniors will be very different. They want to take care of the children, but they also want to do many things. They want to be in technology, they want to work, they want to be productive. So I think that's the challenge that we will have as a society, that you want to nurture the family, but you want to enable a system that all generations come together. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad. I see two hands here from our distinguished panel. Mrs. Lau, would you go first?
Yeah. So I really appreciate the comment sharing on the importance of family. I totally agree and cannot agree more. But I also would like to highlight that actually in Hong Kong, I come from Hong Kong, China. So in Hong Kong, we do have to rethink or broke the walls between all these infrastructures, especially the government subsidized services in the community. For example, traditionally, we support families and divide them into different age. That means we have the children's center, youth center, and then we have elderly center. So if you belong to one family, you go to 3 different places. And now we are very strategically thinking about how this space can be shared and used by different age groups so that to nurture and promote more intergenerational solidarity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Ong, please.
No, thank you for those comments about the family and also for asking questions about what sort of community interventions or ideas or concepts actually have helped. I think to go back to the issue about the family, I think I want to allude to something that Mrs. Liu said a little bit earlier about a healthy relationship between autonomy, interdependency, and dependency. And certainly at the South Foundation, as an organization that provides a lot of long-term care to elders, it's an issue that we think is very important, and this balance actually is often not found. Because actually in a lot of care, what we find is that in long-term care, initially it is all about the person, right, needing the care. But actually at a certain point, let's say, for example, when dementia sort of advances, and it becomes about the person and maybe the caregiver. So maybe the husband and the wife, as they get older. But really actually much later in the long-term care life course, it often is no longer so much actually about the person that you're caring for, but actually about the care that you provide for the whole family who are struggling actually to manage the situation. So I think this balance between autonomy, interdependency, and dependency, particularly in our sort of very Asian family-centric sort of context, I think this is a very important, not just intergenerational issue, but I think a question also basically for our care systems to investigate further, and maybe even our social protection systems as well need to look at this actually much more closely. I don't have a specific prescription in terms of the programs that work particularly well, but what I can tell you is that there has been research in Singapore, from the National University of Singapore, looking at healthy and maybe less healthy relationships that exist between grandparents and grandchildren. And actually what we find is a bit like what I had been alluding to a lot earlier. The more human the relationship is, the more healthy that dyad actually becomes. And what I mean by this is that a lot of times grandchildren and grandparents don't see each other as people, but they see this as my akong, my grandfather, who takes me to school, prepares my lunch, brings me home from school, and then I sit in front of the of the TV and play my video game. Similarly, the older person says, okay, this is someone I have to look after because their parents are at work, and I do this for them. It's a transactional relationship. Actually, what the healthiest intergenerational relationships are the ones that manage to move beyond the transaction, so that the grandparent and the grandchildren actually connect with each other actually as human beings again. They laugh, they play, they talk to each other as real human beings, and that really has actually a much more transformative effect and reduces the stress actually of the caregiving relationship when you actually are able to get to that sort of space. So again, the human connectivity and communication is so important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation, please.
Спасибо, уважаемая госпожа модератор. Вы знаете, я дипломат. Я не специалист в вопросах социальной защиты в их профессиональном смысле. Но мне показалась очень интересной та дискуссия, которая сейчас у нас идет. И я очень благодарен комментариям, которые сделал наш уважаемый эксперт из Министерства труда Российской Федерации. И вы знаете, я немножко был удивлен реакцией уважаемого коллеги из Индии, мистер Рачид Прасад. Мне показалось, он не до конца уловил то, что хотел донести до аудитории представитель Российской Федерации. И, в частности, уважаемый господин Прасад сказал, что это неверный подход. Я бы хотел не, как говорится, в чем-то кого-то обвинять, но я хотел бы подчеркнуть следующее. То, что хотел отметить, и очень правильно с моей точки зрения, представитель Российской Федерации и Министерства труда, это вопросы сохранения семьи, традиционных семейных ценностей. Речь не идет о том, чтобы перекладывать на семью решение вопросов социальной защиты. Нет, конечно. Речь идет о том, чтобы государство со своей стороны выполняло свою роль социального гаранта или, если хотите, реализовало свою историческую ответственность перед будущими поколениями, ответственность перед будущими поколениями за сохранение семьи как ячейки общества, Вот чтобы важно было иметь в виду. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation. Are there any further comments?
Sabine, if I may just quickly respond to that.
Can we just see if there's anyone else in the room who would like to raise this flag? I see the distinguished delegate in the back of the room. I can't see, but over to you. And then...
Yes, good morning and thank you for the opportunity. I don't have a specific comment on the issue of the state and the family, but I have a specific comment on the case of older informal workers. As we know, there are many older informal workers who are still continue to work beyond retirement age, not because out of choice, but out of necessity. So I just would like to also ask our distinguished panelists if they also have, how do you think we can also build our society wherein older workers, all workers will be able to enjoy their retirement? Or for those who want to continue working, how we can also make sure that they also access to decent work, that they get paid well, they get also quality work. And now also with the AI, there are more opportunities for older persons doing platform work because of the lack of retirement age. But how do we also make sure that these workers are also not also accessing appropriate compensations, and also that they will also be able to enjoy as well decent work?
Thank you very much for that comment. With that, I would like to conclude the Q&A, and I would like to ask our distinguished panelists, starting with Mrs. Lauerchai, to please brief us or give us just 1 minute of concluding remarks, and then I continue with the other panelists. Over to you.
Thank you. I think the session really emphasizes the impact of demographic shifts on, not only the economy, but also in the social issues and interpersonal, intergenerational relationships, and that also impact the society as a whole. And I think there are a lot of the issues that are relating to this demographic shifts that, from our discussion, I think many countries, many economy has done quite a lot already in terms of how to prepare for it or how to deal with this sort of shifts that's going on. But it seems, as the lady just also mentioned, I think there are also still a lot that we have to do more, giving examples that other panelists has also mentioned, that there are a lot of government levels that interventions that need to be done, also with the informal workers as well. So I think it really, I think demographic shifts is really important, and it gives, it impacts everybody in every aspect. And I think it's important that we sort of bring everything in together, whether the technology, community, data, and all the things that we can pull in together, all the resources and all the innovations and ideas together to sort of move to this shift in the demography and the society into so that everybody's in the end are in a better quality of life.
Thank you very much. Mr. Prasad.
Yeah, thank you. No, first of all, I would just like to apologize to the Russian team, and my intent was, we believe, and I think everybody here in the room believes, that family has to be the mainstay, the core central pillar in the center around which you design everything. That has to be. They have the repository of values, They are the future. They have to be strengthened and nurtured. The idea that a family plus approach, where the community and others are brought to support the family in the role that we envisage for them. So that was so my apologies if it came across differently. But just to summarize, I think I would go back to the point that we believe in the intergenerational approach, and Paul mentioned it very eloquently, but we also need to act on it. And if we act on it in terms of a focused plan and bringing it into all our policies and programs, then it can have a very powerful effect. Lifelong learning is something that is not given that much attention yet, but there are sparks. We have examples that are coming through, and if we build on those, then the lifelong learning can be a huge way of engaging seniors in the community in a productive way, and at the same time being better prepared for their future. Tech has huge benefits. It also has its divide, I say divide and the dividends, but to make those dividends come through, the digital divide needs to be addressed very quickly, urgently, and for that, all stakeholders need to come into play. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad. Mrs. Lau, over to you.
Thank you. So I would like to conclude by core actions by all the sectors, the government, non-government, civil markets, and the families, and even individuals to co-create our future. I think multi-generational issue is so complex, there will be no reason for us to believe that one solution would solve all the issues and concerns. But only we believe in the wisdom of collective, the wisdom of crowd, so that we can create our new future for intergenerational solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ong.
I think I just want to conclude by reiterating what I said. I don't think there's such a thing as intergenerational programming. I think what I hope we've established here today is that an intergenerational approach is something that should be integral to everything that we do, because we live genuinely in a society that has longevity, and therefore, by definition, is becoming more and more intergenerational, because many generations now actually live healthily together side by side. And so in the process, I think, of the way in which we design our environments, we design our policies, we build our world, we just need to be conscious of the fact anyway that this is the world that we live in. There are many different age groups, all of roughly equal proportion, sharing the same space, needing resources, having a present, and having different types of futures. And so the question here is, how do we actually apply this thinking intentionally and carefully to everything that we do, so that we actually build a society that has that sort of internal harmony between these people of all ages, and is sustainable and works for us as well. I think that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel discussion highlighted that if we were to deliver prosperity to present and future generations, we must have the benefit of demographic foresight and forward-looking analysis and policies that relate the effects of demographic change to the way societies of all ages function and evolve. Countries from the region have much to offer to each other, but also to other parts of the world in terms of sharing good practices and building societies for all ages. For many of us here in Asia and the Pacific, strengthening intergenerational relations and fostering intergenerational solidarity is already a reality. However, as we have seen, there's more work to be done. Forthcoming meetings here at ESCAP with governments and stakeholders, capacity building projects, and many other activities that we convene together with UN entities, with governments, with stakeholders, will provide ample opportunity to share more good practices and advance the agenda. I would like to thank the participants in the room for the thoughtful questions and comments, and our esteemed panelists for their insightful responses. I now have the privilege to hand it over to the chair to continue the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Henning, and distinguished panelists for invigorating panel discussions and for highlighting how demographic change is impacting all aspects of life in countries across Asia and the Pacific, and how intergenerational solidarity can be strengthened. I now open up the floor to the statements under Agenda Item 4. I will first open the floor to statements from members, associate members, and observer countries. I will then invite statements from intergovernmental, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other entities. I invite the first speaker on this afternoon's list, the distinguished delegate of the Philippines, to please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Like other countries in the Asian Pacific, the Philippines is undergoing a strategic demographic shift. While we remain one of the countries with the highest populations in the region, our population growth has declined from 2.3% in 1994 to 1.5% in 2022. This is mainly driven by the progressive decline in our total fertility rate, which is at 1.9 children per woman in 2022, already below the replacement fertility level. This is impacting our country's age structure, marked by a declining young population and an increase in working age and older individuals. As of 2020, Filipinos aged 65 years old and above comprise 5.4% of the total Philippine population. A recent population projections indicate that this population group will reach 7% by 2030. The Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028, our national blueprint for development in the country, has explicitly included policies and strategies that adhere to the life cycle approach for human capital formation. Laws have also been enacted to support this. For example, our Universal Health Care Act guarantees 100% coverage of all Filipinos in the government health insurance program. Our Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Law provides for reproductive health services to Filipinos from womb to tomb. In 2013, we rolled out our first 1,000 Days program, which addresses the golden window of opportunity for the child to achieve his or her full potential in the different aspects of development. Mr. Chair, we have also our Philippine Plan of Action for Senior Citizens for 2023 to 2028, which aims to empower older persons and allow them to live healthy and productive lives as active members in nation building. Its development was guided by the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, the MIPAA, and we are very interested to have regional discussions on the MIPAA's implementation to learn more and further support our initiatives on aging in our country. We shall continue the whole of government and the whole of society action to address pressing population and development-related challenges while advancing people's rights and well-being through inclusive and equitable development. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of the Philippines. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegates of Indonesia. I'm sorry, Bangladesh? Okay. I'm sorry, the next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegates of Bangladesh, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, we thank ESCAP Secretariat for its research-based report on demographic trends and intergenerational relations in Asia and the Pacific, highlighting good practices from across the region. Demographic dynamics in this region present both opportunities and challenges, and we believe a proactive and inclusive approach is essential to harness these trends effectively. In recognition of this, Bangladesh hosted the UNFPA Global Dialogue on Demographic Diversity and Sustainable Development in May this year as part of our contribution to the UN Summit of the Future. Bangladesh is now witnessing the phenomena of both a sizable young population and an aging demographic. Our government thus acknowledges the need to adopt a life cycle approach that supports citizens at every stage of life. Our socio-economic development programs are broadly aimed at enhancing intergenerational solidarity, fostering economic resilience, and ensuring the well-being of both younger and older populations. Key initiatives taken by the Bangladesh government include old age allowance and universal pension system, support for youth employment and skill development, and mother and child welfare programs. In order to effectively address demographic trends in the context of global megatrends, we underscore the following 4 issues. First, investment in youth and older persons. A balanced investment approach is essential, depending on the context, towards ensuring that both ends of the age spectrum receive adequate support. In our national context, the budget allocation for youth skills development has increased by 15% in the current fiscal year, while provisions have been made for additional special allowances for people over the age of 90. Second, strengthening intergenerational relations. Bangladesh emphasizes the importance of family and community in fostering positive intergenerational relations. Programs like community-based childcare and daycare centers in workplaces support working families while promoting a sense of responsibility among younger generations towards their elders. 6,430 daycare centers have been established to facilitate mothers working in various sectors. Third, a rights-based approach. Bangladesh welcomes the adoption of the Declaration on Future Generations and its underlying spirit as part of the UN Pact for the Future. We support the call for adopting an international legal instrument on promoting and protecting the rights of the elderly. For us, it would remain critical to keep working at promoting decent work for all and investing in lifelong learning. Fourth, data-driven policy making. With support from ESCAP and partners, Bangladesh is working on improving data collection and analysis, including comprehensive demographic data to inform policy decisions. Our national population database, now integrated with social safety net programs, allows for better tracking of beneficiaries and their changing needs over time. Mr. Chair, Bangladesh looks forward to having the issue of intergenerational relations addressed prominently at the World Summit on Social Development next year. A fuller version of this intervention is being shared with the Secretariat for record. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Bangladesh. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Nepal, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Mr. Chair, Excellency, distinguished delegates, good morning. Nepal has also been experiencing demographic shift due to the declining population growth and rapid migration. As per recent census, the population growth is just 0.93%. Many households have now only elderly people living. Youth are working and studying abroad. Today's discussion obviously will help to design policy for strengthening intergenerational relation. Some policy and program we have following for old age populations includes as follow. Getting benefit in the field of socio-economic development together with production and productivity through transfer of intergenerational knowledge, skills, experience, along with ensuring a respectable living environment for senior citizens. Increasing the participation of senior citizens by giving priority in the area of policy making, development programs, and preservation of heritage and culture. Addressing the basic and family needs of senior citizens, health care, nursing care, entertainment, and specialized needs. And for the healthcare and treatment of senior citizens in all government, community, and private health institutions. There is a senior citizen ward with certain percentage of beds so that they can receive the healthcare at a concessional rate. These are the current policy we have. Obviously, this current discussion today help us to design the further policy for this intergeneration given the demographic shift. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Nepal. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Indonesia, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Indonesia has entered an aging population since 2020 and will become a population with higher than 20% of older people beyond 60 years in 2045. This condition will also take place in Asia-Pacific countries. As this shift occurs, the focus of population development will gradually move from youth-centered initiative to addressing the needs of our older population. The ideal goal is to ensure that every older person in Indonesia is healthy, independent, and dignified in the later stage of life. Currently, we have national strategy of aging to prepare the future Indonesia elderly as early as 1,000 first day of life. In this strategy, we must adopt a life cycle approach to achieve future vision for more dignified aging, recognizing that building an ideal old age starts from early life. Government plays a critical role by providing service and support for the elderly, easing the caregiving focus on work age family members. Indonesia is now committed to this issue. Care work, traditional undervalued and dominated by women, offers a new opportunity for economic growth. By ensuring fair wage and expanding opportunities for women, we can foster economic progress and prepare older women while promoting gender equality. Care economy is priority agenda in the National Medium-Term Development Planning 2025-2029. Additionally, Indonesia has adopted the Care Economy Roadmap and National Action Plan 2025-2045, building on the policy momentum generated during Indonesia presidency of G20 and the ASEAN. To demonstrate a greater commitment, Indonesia has also initiated a pilot program called Integrate Older People Service. This program facilitates the care of older individuals with their own communities at the village level. Currently, there are 5 locations for older people service in Bali and Yogyakarta Province. The program has been internationally recognized, supported by its digital information system, Silani or Indonesia Older Person Information System. We are welcome for collaboration with all stakeholders to ensure that every older person in Asia Pacific and in Indonesia treated with dignity and prosperity. With the support of UNFPA and HelpAge International, Indonesia recently hosted the 2024 Asia Pacific Regional Conference on Population Aging in Bali. Under the theme Reforming Aging, this conference brought together over 450 experts, policymakers, UN, international organizations, and civil society organizations from 38 countries. Population change are not problem. How we respond to this shift poses that real challenge. By adopting a comprehensive life cycle and intergenerational approach and embracing gender equality and the care economy, we can ensure that these demographic changes are met with opportunity, not burden, for the Asia-Pacific region, especially for Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Indonesia. I again reminded all the delegates to strictly with 3 minutes of the intervention. And the next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegates of Thailand, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to reaffirm Thailand's commitment to addressing demographic change and its socio-economic impacts. We recognize the need for inclusive and forward-thinking policies that cater to the diverse needs of the population. In April 2024, the Thai cabinet approved the policy aiming to address the population crisis called 5x5, Let's Turn the Tide. This comprehensive initiative emphasized 5 key areas of development. First, empowering the working age population. Second, improving the quality of children and youth. Third, supporting older persons. Fourth, expanding opportunities for persons with disabilities. And fifth, building an ecosystem that fosters family security. Moreover, to foster intergenerational connections, the National Housing Authority advocates for multi-generational living with adaptable and age-friendly designs. At the same time, the Community Organizations Development Institute, or CODI, promotes inclusive and community-driven planning and development to empower communities and allow people to be the solution to their housing challenges. To strengthen local support system, community volunteers, including village health volunteers and social development and human security volunteers, are actively providing basic health care and companionship to older persons. In addition, the Thai government supports the Older Persons Volunteer Program, which mobilized over 50,000 younger volunteers to visit and assist older adults. These volunteers serve as a vital link between older persons and social services, ensuring their needs are met and enhancing their quality of life. Thailand also remains dedicated to promoting employment opportunities and social protection for persons with disabilities. We believe that equal access to employment is not only a matter of human rights, but also essential to building a more resilient society. Our collaboration with educational institutions and the private sectors aims to enhance skill training and foster innovation to increase employment rates for persons with disabilities. These efforts are part of our broader goal to ensure that the working age population is fully prepared for the changing demands of the future economy. Lastly, as the aging population steadily increases, Thailand recognized the urgent need to revisit and enhance the implementation of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, or MIPA. A regional implementation plan is essential to effectively tackle the complex challenge arising from demographic shift and create a more inclusive society that ensures dignity, care, and opportunities for all, regardless of age or ability. Mr. Chair, Thailand is dedicated to collaborating with all nations to turn the tide and shape a future where social development is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Thailand. The next speaker is the distinguished delegate of China, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China is committed to timely, scientific, and comprehensive responses to population aging. We have been improving the policy and regulatory system for safeguarding the rights and interests of the elderly. We have continuously enhanced the level of social security and strengthened the construction of the elderly care service system. And we fully opened up the elderly care service market. We have vigorously developed the silver economy too. Aging is an important achievement of the progress of human civilization. While bringing common challenges, it also breeds opportunities. China is willing to work with Asia-Pacific countries to jointly address risks and challenges. We recommend strengthening cooperation in the following aspects. First, improve the global aging governance system. Promote the establishment of bilateral or multilateral cooperation mechanisms on aging issues. Carry out policy dialogues on responding to aging. deepen research on the development trend of the world's aging population, strengthen the sharing and exchange of research results. Second, promote innovative cooperation in responding to population aging. Take innovation as a powerful driving force and strategic support for actively responding to population aging. Further deepen international cooperation in scientific and technological innovation, such as joint research and development, technology application, and cultivation of scientific and technological talents. Third, share market opportunities in the silver economy. Promote practical cooperation and project docking in the field of the silver economy. Strengthen soft connectivity in aspects such as personnel, technology, and standards. Promote cooperation in key industries such as care services, medical health, and elderly products, and support enterprises in carrying out collaborative cooperation in upstream and downstream of the industrial chain to expand the supply of elderly care products and services. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of China. The next speaker is the distinguished delegates of Sri Lanka, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen. Sri Lanka is an island in Indian Ocean which is having wholesome climate and rich biodiversity. High population lives in urban areas due to rural people migration to urban areas. Brain drain is gradually increased due to migration of other countries. Most of the rural community has opportunities to get higher education. Educated generation wish to obtain better life standard and migrate them to find job opportunities. Their production and consumption patterns are changed from rural to urban. After migration, their life is busy rather than previous and no leisure to spend with each other. They detach from their extended family and make nuclear family. Numbers of family members are declined due to many reasons. Population growth is declined and gradually older persons are increased. Younger generation and working age population decline due to population growth is declined. Parents are being along in their older age. Previous agro-based employment changed to new technology-based employments. Earnings escalated rather than previous generation. Intergenerational relations decline. Intergenerational relations decline. Previous family bonds and social norms are becoming weak gradually. Migrated peoples involved with diversified economic activities for their living purposes. They live in small owned houses, rented houses, or apartments with small home garden. Due to displacement of early living areas, migrants face various social and economic issues. They face difficulties to look after their ancient parents, their aging parents and grandparents, as well as their children. So, elder care and child care centers needed, and it creates new jobs but increases social unrest. Not like rural life, for the survival and to find more opportunities, they have to continue their lifelong learning. They have to use new technology for many occasions. New generation has to face more challenges rather than previous generation. Some recommendation for it. Facilities need to provide equally in all demographic areas. Economic disparity should be removed. Resources should be equally available. Attitudes need to change, giving priorities to traditional knowledge. Communication gap need to be removed. More time for discussions among generations should have. I wish to conclude these issues giving some solutions. Understanding that people of all age are equally important. Aware new generation about ancient values, norms, and traditions. National Council for Elders to take decisions and maintenance board for elders to discuss their problems, reduce intergenerational gaps. Thank you for listening this. Okay.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Sri Lanka. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of Russian Federation, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Уважаемый господин председатель, как и многие страны, Россия в настоящее время переживает период демографического спада. Причины указанных проблем в демографии имеют историческую основу. Снижается численность женщин в репродуктивном возрасте. По итогам прошлого года сохраняется тенденция снижения рождаемости. Такая тенденция обусловлена сокращением интенсивности рождений первых и вторых детей. При этом тенденция роста уровня рождаемости третьих и последующих детей имеет устойчивую позитивную динамику. Государственная политика Российской Федерации в области повышения рождаемости основывается на оказании семьям в связи с рождением и воспитанием детей прямой материальной помощи в виде единовременных и периодических выплат и пособий, налоговых льгот, обеспечения трудовых прав и гарантий, предоставляемых в связи с материнством, отцовством и воспитанием детей, повышении доступности и качества медицинских и образовательных услуг, услуг учреждений культуры, отдыха и досуга, физической культуры и спорта, обеспечение условий для совмещения родительских и семейных обязанностей с профессиональной деятельностью, создании социальной инфраструктуры, учитывающей потребности семей с детьми. В России продлена программа материнского капитала, возобновлена ежегодная индексация размера капитала, что позволяет сохранять его покупательную способность. За время реализации программы помощь получили уже более 14 миллионов семей. Только в прошлом году было выдано свыше 920 тысяч сертификатов, а 1,5 миллиона семей распорядились средствами. Работа по поддержке семей с детьми будет продолжена в рамках разрабатываемого нового национального проекта «Семья». Планируется, что новый национальный проект будет предусматривать мероприятия, обеспечивающие в том числе устойчивый рост к 2030 году рождаемости населения Российской Федерации, формирование и развитие инфраструктуры детства, в том числе охрану материнства, сбережение здоровья детей и подростков, повышение доступности для семей, имеющих детей, дошкольных, образовательных и общеобразовательных организаций, расширение сети женских консультаций, модернизацию перинатальных центров, детских поликлиник и больниц, а также капитальный ремонт, начиная с 2025 года, дошкольных, образовательных организаций и многое другое. Уважаемый господин председатель, как я уже говорил, забота государства должна охватывать граждан всех возрастов, уделяя особое внимание старшему поколению. Сегодня во всех регионах России действуют программы активного долголетия. В прошлом году более 3,5 миллионов граждан старшего возраста приняли участие в различных мероприятиях этого проекта. Для тех пожилых граждан, кому требуется постоянная помощь, в России развернута система долговременного ухода. Завершая свое выступление, хотел бы отметить, что именно международное сотрудничество помогает нашим странам найти лучшие решения по преодолению вызовов в социально-трудовой сфере. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Russian Federation. The next speaker is the distinguished delegate of India, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. India being home to diverse geographies and culture, and also one of the most populous country in the world, has prioritized maternal and child health as well as family planning in driving the agenda on population and development. It has adopted multi-pronged approach to address the issues that hidden included growth and development, which has yielded positive result in the past few years. India has been one of the foremost country in the world with a planned approach to population and development through sustained family planning initiatives. It is estimated that India's care needs are slated to expand significantly in the next 25 years. As an aging population follows the ongoing demographic transition, while the population of the children speeds related sizable. Therefore, India is focusing towards formalizing of job in care sector and a skilled workforce, particularly women, reaping its youth demographic dividend to cater the expanding care needs. Maternal health remains one of the key priority of Government of India. We have consistently working towards the elimination of maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate. Remarkably, in the past decade, there has been a significant decline in the maternal mortality rate from 167 in 2011-13 to 97 in 2018-20. India is on its way to achieve the target 3.1 of SDG 3 focused on reducing the global maternal mortality rate to less than 70% per 1,000 live births. To foster maternal health, the Government of India has a robust frontline healthcare infrastructure in place, instituted through the ASHA, Accredited Social Health Activist Program, that has enabled sustained support for accepted mothers and the institutionalization of the health services that has resulted in better health outcomes and increase in institutional births. Furthermore, the government has its Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana has provided financial supports to more than 35 million expected mothers with a total disbursement of more than 1.7 billion US. I am happy to share that India has landmark achievement reduced of the child mortality rate, wherein mortality has reduced to 24.9% per 1,000 live births. India has also made significant progress in reducing infant mortality that has significantly declined to 28 in 2020 from 44 in 2011. To provide basic level of financial supports to the vulnerable section, including widows, women, senior citizens, and women with disabilities, the National Social Assistance Program was launched to provide senior citizens with a suitable income source after retirement. Pradhan Mantri Vandana Yojana PMVY is being implemented. I firmly believe that deliberations held during this conference will definitely lead to gender-responsive outcomes that foster intergenerational resilience while providing support to vulnerable sections of the society. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of India. That is the end of my list of the members' countries. Is there any other members who would like to interfere? I guess no members. Now I invite the distinguished delegate of intergovernmental organizations, UN bodies and specialized agencies, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders. I wish to request the delegates provide their names and affiliation before delivering their statement. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of area, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, panelists, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and also in response to the Philippine question on Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. I am Anton Villanueva from Economic Research Institute for ASEAN in East and East Asia. It is a great honor to speak on behalf of AREA at this important session. As an international research institution dedicated to supporting policymaking in the ASEAN region, we recognize the significant implications of the demographic shift, particularly aging populations, present in terms of both challenges and opportunities for our societies. In response to these dynamics, AREA has conducted extensive research on aging populations within the ASEAN context. Our comprehensive research on the longitudinal study of aging and health, conducted in the Philippines and Vietnam, offers in-depth insights into the economic conditions, living environments, and health statuses of older persons in these countries before and after the pandemic. Our initial findings highlight critical areas of concern, such as poverty, particularly among older females, and barriers to accessing essential healthcare services. Another research in Indonesia on healthy aging and longevity captured the profile of seniors who remain active at the age of 70 and above by examining influential factors such as socioeconomic conditions, psychology, lifestyle, activities, nutrition, and intergenerational relationships. Furthermore, in collaboration with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, AREA has conducted research on active aging in Southeast Asia using estimated working life expectancy as the indicator. The early findings showed that extended working life expectancy positively influences income per capita from 2020 to 2040 in 6 ASEAN countries. We believe that our research findings will significantly contribute to the development and formulation of policy strategies not only within the ASEAN region, but also in other regions facing similar demographic challenges. We express our strong commitment to continuing this important research and collaboration with ESCAP and other international bodies to tackle the challenges and seize the opportunities arising from demographic changes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of AREA. The next speaker is the distinguished delegate of UNFPA. I'm sorry. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate from DPAIP, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our Disabled Peoples International Asia Pacific would like to make an intervention under this agenda with a focus on deinstitutionalization and the need to ensure the coverage of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or CRPD, regardless of age. Many countries in Asia and the Pacific region are facing the realities of an aged society. DPIAP is concerned about the existing gap between the social protection policies for persons with disabilities and those for the elderly, typically defined as an individual over 60 or 65 years old, depending on the country. It is important to highlight that many individuals over 65 or 60 continue to actively contribute to society, working in both formal and informal sectors, and participating in the community and family activities in any forms. Additionally, a portion of this aging population has accumulated assets and savings, allowing them to support not only themselves, but also future generations. These individuals remain economically and socially active, and their rights, including the rights to live independently and with dignity in the community, must be ensured. So DPIAP urges member states to view the CRPD as a guiding framework for policies and that address the needs of all generations, including older persons with disabilities. We specifically call attention to the General Comment number 5 of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD/C/GC/5, which interprets Article 19 of the CRPD on the right to live independently in the community. In its paragraph 35, it emphasizes that support services need to be acceptable. which means that they must respect standard levels of quality and be gender, age, and culturally sensitive. To achieve this, DPIAP also insists on the importance of promoting deinstitutionalization. Without deinstitutionalization, how can persons with disabilities in any generations join intergenerational solidarity, community programs, and activities as a family member? Support services must enable all persons, regardless of age and gender, to live independently in the community, as this is fundamental right outlined in the CRPD. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of DPIAP. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegate of UNFPA, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, my name is Wasana Im Aim from UNFPA Asia and the Pacific Regional Office. It is an honor to address this commission on the critical issue of assessing demographic trends and intergenerational relations in Asia and the Pacific. This region is home for nearly 2/3 of the world's population. It is undergoing rapid demographic transition that will shape its future, social and economic development. Asia and the Pacific are home for the world's largest youth population, representing a unique opportunity for demographic dividend if adequately supported. Young people can drive economic growth and social development. However, realizing this potential requires investment in education, employment, and sexual and reproductive health services. Ensuring that youth are empowered and engaged will be key to the region's long-term prosperity. At the same time, many countries in the region are facing the challenges of an aging population. With increasing life expectancy and declining fertility, a number of countries are experiencing profound demographic shift. Older persons may face greater health risk and social isolation, but they also contribute valuable experience, knowledge, and skills to enable the prosperity of youth, working age, and older generations. Fostering intergenerational solidarity is essential. UNFPA supports countries in using NTA, National Transfer Accounts, a tool providing evidence to support intergenerational economy, which can be used to support policy advancement on population aging. Policy must promote mutual understanding and ensure that all age groups are adequately supported in their contributions to social and economic development. A key aspect of sustainable development is addressing gender inequality. Women and girls in many parts of Asia and the Pacific still face barriers to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities, perpetuating cycles of poverty. Empowering women is essential for achieving intergenerational equity and ensuring that future generations have access to equal opportunities. The International Conference on Population and Development, or ICPD principles, which center on human rights, gender equality, and access to sexual and reproductive health, are fundamental in breaking these cycles and promoting equitable development. In conclusion, the demographic shifts in Asia and the Pacific offer both challenges and opportunities for sustainable development. By prioritizing youth empowerment, gender equality, and intergenerational solidarity, we can ensure a more equitable and sustainable future. The ICPD principles guide this work, ensuring that human rights, gender equality, and reproductive health are central to all policy and strategies. UNFPA remains committed to supporting these efforts, ensuring that our generation can contribute to and benefit from social development. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of UNFPA. The next speaker is the distinguished delegate of Development, Welfare, and Research Foundation, DWRF, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Respected Chair, greetings to all. I, Dr. Mala Kapoor Shankardas from Development, Welfare and Research Foundation, as an invited observer, wish to point out that Asian countries are now identified with slower population growth and the demographic shift characterized by a rising number and share of older persons, older women in particular, and a high number of young people as part of its population dynamics. However, what tends to be overlooked in these trends are the changes occurring in the intergenerational relationships from the traditional forms to newer dimensions of family interactions, living arrangements, and positioning of the generations in support of each other, with significant impacts on the wider micro and macro context of social security. There is an urgent need to comprehend that when we examine the impact on intergenerational relations due to population aging and view it in the context of implications for chalking out robust social protection systems, we must examine these relationships primarily as familial generations rather than as between different age cohorts. Recent findings from studies as well as evidence from different available data sources indicates various kinds of transfers taking place in different and varied families and households. It is imperative that policymakers take a note of these when developing social security and protection strategies that can benefit generations simultaneously. My work indicates that transfers happen both up and down in familial generations, which revolve around care, obligations, sharing of property and economic resources, and these need to be strengthened so that benefits and services can be shared equitably. My suggestion is for governments to make arrangements for social security and protection policies that encourage generational support mechanisms in familial circumstances rather than being seen as interests of generations in conflict. If policies can support younger familial members to facilitate security of older and also vice versa, then generational social protection needs, adopting a life cycle perspective, would be a better safeguard for individuals living together. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of DWRF. The next speaker and the last is the distinguished delegate of Federation of Free Workers, the Philippines, whom I now invite to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Julius Kainglet from the Federation of Free Workers, an affiliate of the International Trade Union Confederation. The importance of the matriarch and the other girl and women members of the family in performing care work cannot be emphasized enough. The care they do enables other members of the family to engage in decent and productive work. But the recognition of the importance is not reflected in law, policy, and practice. Care work is work, but it is largely unpaid. This takes on an even more complex dimension for migrant-sending countries who export labor, professional at that, to perform care work for the young, elderly, and the sick in migrant-receiving countries. This prompted the International Labor Conference to start attempting to set standards for care work early this year. Workers in trade unions believe that the state should enable societies to veer away from unpaid care work and support the family or family members and communities who perform care work that in turn enables the rest of the family and society to get the economy of the country and the whole world going. Meanwhile, precarious work, informalization, including gig economy work, has been affecting social protection institutions in many countries, with social protection contributions waning as workers are removed from employer-employee relationships and gig economy workers in particular getting independent contractor status. Informalization and precarity to a great extent also negatively impacts occupational safety and health. We hold that workers in this type of work be recognized as workers, imbued with all the fundamental principles and rights at work, including the right to unionize and to collective bargaining, so that they can raise creative and adaptive social protection schemes both with their employers, on one hand, and with government through tripartism and social dialogue. Finally, while we note that digitalization has facilitated delivery of needed social protection, it has prevented a big portion of the population from enjoying the same because of the digital divide. Workers, the poor, and marginalized have no access to updated and more interactive gadgets and devices, no access to stable and strong internet connection, and have no training or know-how in operating technology. The cost of all these should be affordable, if not free. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, delegates of FFW. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we have now reached the end of this agenda item. Thank you for your statements, which have provided information on how countries across Asia and the Pacific are addressing demographic shift in a forward-looking way. The country intervention from delegations of this session highlighted the many dimensions of intergenerational relations and spotlighted good practices in fostering closer relations across age cohorts. On this basis, I hope that the committee agrees to the decision proposed in the documents ESCAP/CSD8/4 to request the Secretariat to continue its work on population and development issues with a focus on intergenerational relations within its existing mandate and invite members and associate members to promote and work on intergenerational issues, in particular in light of the Second World Summit for Social Development in 2025, and the forthcoming 5th review and appraisal of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging 2002 in Asia and the Pacific. If there is no interventions, we can consider the committee on agreement with this decision. Yes, delegates, distinguished delegates of Japan, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like the other decisions, can you also align the language within existing mandates and resources? Thank you.
Okay, Secretariat will take the notes and make the change. Is there any other interventions? No? Yeah. If there are no interventions, we can consider the committee on agreements with this decision. I guess this now concludes our deliberations for this morning sessions. We will now resume the committee at 2 p.m. in this room. And thank you, MC. I now declare the meeting adjourned.